Hey, my name is Sarah Hood, and today I'm going to discuss with you 201, my exit interview. And this time I'm going to be talking about NAEYC Standards 3 and 4. NAEYC Standard 3 consists of observing, documenting, and assessing to support young children and their families. The first artifact I chose for this was ECD 107, my Modified Materials Project. This project allowed me to search for materials that could go into a classroom to help meet the needs of any student in my classroom that are struggling with a certain development that really needs to be worked on, and a milestone and goal that they want to reach and that I want them to reach as well. So this project really allowed me to research different things that I could promote and put in my classroom to benefit not only my students but me as well, on knowing how to assess them and document their growth. So to me, this project corresponds with Standard 3C because when observing and documenting a child's growth, I find that in the future I need DAP materials in my classroom, more so than I thought before. As a teacher, knowing what is going to benefit my classroom and help my students reach personal milestones is a goal of mine. It allowed me to think outside the box while doing this project and search for unique materials to put in my classroom to meet the needs of each one of my students. This artifact contributed to my education by allowing me to research modified materials and learn what they do and how they can improve a child's learning environment. This improved my student learning by allowing me to make and adapt my own lessons that I'm making now and that I will make in the future with the children that need that little extra support. For example, I had a child in one of my lab sites that really struggled with their fine motor skills. So when I did a lesson with him, I did it one-on-one so he would feel comfortable. And I wanted him to pick up things with tongs. So I got some kid-friendly tongs, and I was able to make that adaptation for him. And I could just see the spark in his eye on getting to use tongs and getting to learn that way, and I could really tell a difference in his fine motor skills, just how focused he was and how determined he was. And it was just really awesome experience for me. And by practicing positive assessment with modified materials, it will allow me to assess each child in a responsible manner. And this was really awesome because I got to research 10 different materials that I would want to put in my classroom, and I get to keep this, and I will probably be using this in the future. So this is definitely an artifact that I'm going to hold on to. My next artifact that I chose was from ECD 102, and it was a case study paper. I did this on a little girl in my classroom. She was an infant, and when I first got there, she was just kind of starting to reach some of her growth milestones that her personal teacher wanted her to reach. And after getting to know her, I really got to see her milestones, and it was amazing, and it was so beautiful. But to me, that artifact, getting to write this paper and observe her, it really went along with Standard 3B because knowing how to assess documentation. And when I met Audrey, the infant, I watched her and observed her over the course of 10 weeks. And I assessed her growth and all developmental milestones that she had reached. This artifact contributed to my education by showing me what it means to truly document information, and it allowed me to observe the growth of one specific child. Even though I wrote this paper based off one child, I was able to observe many of the children in my infant classroom, and I got to see them all develop at different stages, and it was just amazing to me. And for instance, like Audrey, when I first got there, she was on formula, and by the time I was leaving, she was starting to eat solid foods and trying to feed herself to an extent. And it was just so amazing to see the growth that she had met in those short 10 weeks, me only going one time a week, just all the growth I've seen in her. And this benefited my student learning by showing me different ways to document information for each child and what it truly means to practice responsible assessment. And my third artifact was ECD 131, and this was by far one of my favorite things that I did, and it was that I had a book buddy at Pendleton Elementary School. She was one of the best little girls I have ever met, and she will forever have a place in my heart. But during my time during 131, I had the opportunity to go work with an after-school child at Pendleton Elementary. One day a week we went to the school and I had my own book buddy. And we were able to read together and do small lessons together. And from day one, I knew I wanted to walk in and be welcoming and so positive. And when we did our first lesson, I really wanted to assess where she was and where we wanted to go in that 10 weeks. And I was able to document so much. And from beginning to end, for example, I could tell that she struggled with rhyming words. So at the beginning, because that was one of my first lessons that I had done. Well, that's something we continuously kind of pushed and we worked on every single time to a little bit. And by the end, she was spot on with rhyming words. And I was just so overwhelmed with how rewarding that was for me. But to me, that connected with NAEYC Standard 3A because I was able to promote reading to her and learning. I was able to promote learning while I was documenting the child and assessing her growth for the first time until the last time that I had gone. During this time I was there, I could tell a tremendous amount of growth in her reading skills. I was able to make that connection with her every week while I was observing, and I could tell such a difference in her reading skills in just a matter of 10 weeks when we were able to go. We had a relationship and she trusted me and my teaching abilities, and it contributed to make a positive impact on my student learning. I would challenge her and she would challenge me at the same time. As a future educator, that is what you need. You need somebody that is going to push you, and that's exactly what children will do. They will push you to be your best. It contributed to my education by allowing me to have a relationship with a student and figuring out ways to change lessons and make them developmentally appropriate for her. And I was able to assess abilities the first few times I visited, and then from that point on, we worked on reaching those many milestones. And one of the most rewarding things for me during this was, at the end, one of my projects to do was make her a book and give it to her. And I was just overwhelmed with the amount of love she gave me when I gave her that book. And she was just as happy as I was, which made me even happier. So it was just this was a really positive project on my end. So the next standard we're going to move on to is Standard 4, and this is using developmentally appropriate practices, which is very important as a future educator. The first artifact that I chose for this was ECD 203, and it was a welcome letter that I would do to families, not only in 203, but I just said specifically 203. We did this with every lab we went to, every site we did. I would write a welcome letter introducing myself to the parents and what I'd be doing there over the course of 10 weeks. I gave them my background about me, what my personal goals were while I was in their classroom, and my goals for life, what I planned on doing for college. And just that I was super stoked to get to meet their child and get to know their families through their children. And to me, this related to Standard 4A and B. I was able to build a positive relationship with parents while doing the welcome letter because they were able to get to know me, and it allowed me to promote positive interactions with the foundation of young children in my classroom. I used this effective strategy so I could connect with parents and put my name out there for them to know me, and they trusted me with their child, because for me that was super important. This contributed to my education because it gave me the opportunity to introduce myself to the parents of the students in my classroom. I was able to tell them about myself, what my goals were, and why I was going to be in their classroom. This had a positive impact on my student learning because it made me realize how important it is to engage with parents in my classroom and the interactions that are going to be built for our relationships to better understanding of their child. So this was a really awesome artifact that I did. To me, it really connected with being DAP because making those positive interactions with children is super important, but I think it's just as important that I make that interaction with the family as well. And knowing effective strategies to use, just as simple as a welcome letter, it can make a world of difference when I'm trying to teach DAP lessons, and knowing that me and the parents are on the same page with what we're doing for their child to reach their milestones. It's really helpful, and it's really good to know and to be on the same page so that both at home and at school we're both being DAP and we're both doing our very best for that child. The second thing that I chose was a lab reflection 1 from 243. I was actually super excited to do this one because this was when I got to go back for 243. I got to go 2 semesters in a row to the same class, which means I got to see the children from beginning to end. So I got to see a lot of growth, and it was an amazing experience for me. So I shared my lab reflection the first time going back, just to show what DAP was and how important it was for me to be on the same page with the children. This related to standard 4D because I reflected on my own practices and I promoted positive outcomes for each child in my class. I was fortunate enough to be with the same group of children for 2 semesters in a row. I got to see their growth from 4-year-olds evolve into kindergartners that were ready to take on the world. This contributed to my education because through my reflections, I was able to overcome each day and reflect on the lessons I taught, the way I interacted with each child, along with documenting important information about certain children that I observed throughout the day. This had a positive impact on my student learning because it made me realize that reflecting on each day and every week does not only help me, but it helps my students as well. If I can become a better me by improving what I do and the way I teach, it's only going to make a better impact on their education, which to me is extremely developmentally appropriate because I have to be my best and teach my best for them to do their best, and that's number 1 on the list for me as a future educator. The third artifact that I chose was from ECD 102, and this is called Nature versus Nurture. This was a paper that I wrote that really reflected on what nature means and what nurture means, what it truly means. And by doing this, I was able to talk about what times during a child's life are both important, but when they become separate as well, and when it is an appropriate time to contribute both of these. To me, this connected to Standard 4A because I was able to understand what interactions were positive for young children at what age. Having a solid foundation for a child reflects the way educators use developmentally appropriate practices in our classrooms, not kindergarten, as we gain knowledge on what to teach and different learning approaches. This artifact contributed to my education because I had to learn what nature and nurture truly means and what times during a child's life it is crucial to adapt both. I had to research how and why these interactions play a role in early childhood. It made a positive impact on my student learning because I not only had to learn about the topic, but observe it during my lab classes, and it's something that I'm going to need to know when I'm teaching in the future for which age group, when it is appropriate to be nurturing, when is it appropriate for nature to occur, when is it appropriate to adapt both for what child, what needs need to be met for each child. So through that, I was able to be with the children from different ages, from infancy to kindergarten thus far. So I was able to see what truly means to be nurturing and what it means for nature to let nature take its course. So this was a really awesome opportunity for me to reflect on what is DAP for what children. And that is all I have for standards 3 and 4. Standard 3 was, again, it was observing, documenting, and assessing to support young children and their families. And standard 4 was using developmentally appropriate practices. The next video that I will make will talk about standards 5, 6, and 7. So stay tuned one more time. Thank you.